Wheat farmers are always looking for ways to earn more from every acre. Today on Kernels, we're asking one of the country's leading experts how to make it happen. Plus, see your checkoff dollars in action as Ohio State researchers put new weed control strategies to the test and reveal what those findings mean for your farm. It's all coming up on this special edition of Kernels on the road at the Ohio State University Small Grains Field Day in South Charleston. Welcome to Kernels. I'm Tad Nicholson. Today we're at the Ohio State University Small Grains Field Day at the Western Agricultural Research Station in South Charleston. This event gives farmers a first-hand look at the latest wheat research and management practices being tested right here in Ohio. That's why the Ohio Small Grains Checkoff supports not only this event, but the work that happens here. One of the most important topics farmers are discussing today is how to make wheat production more profitable. Dr. Grant Gardner of the University of Kentucky is here to present on that very issue, and I wanted to share some of his insights with you all. Grant, thanks for being here with us.
Great to be here.
Well, let's get right to it, Grant. First of all, what's your thoughts about the demand situation of wheat in the United States? What opportunities are there for Ohio farmers?
Yeah, and so if we look at wheat, it differs a lot from corn and soybeans. And so we think of wheat as a food crop. And so a lot of that's going to go to human consumption. And so in general, if we look at that part of the demand, we don't see tons of population growth within the United States. Preference haven't really changed a whole lot for breads. And so typically we see that increase about 1 to 2% per year. Other uses include feed use. We don't see feed use pop off until really we're in a spot where corn prices are really high. And obviously we're not in that situation currently. And so right now we have exports driving a lot of it. That has been a strong story this year. We have had a big increase in exports, and that's helped quite a bit. That said, looking at really where the prices have gone throughout the year, we kind of limped along. If you went back to even in February and March, I'm glad to say I was wrong, but I was telling producers I'm looking at wheat really as a $5 crop right now. And then we hit, recently in the past couple months, after the Strait of Hormuz was shut off, we had nitrogen prices increase, and that pushed futures up. And additionally, we had a lot of weather stress in the West, especially in hard red winter wheat regions such as Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. And so that's pushed that price up of late. And so I think we peaked a few weeks ago at about $6.80. Today we're up a little bit again, but we have fallen off since then, but we are up a little bit. And so we've fallen down around that $5.60 range if we're talking about futures.
Feel bad about the drought being out west, but the ones in the eastern corn belt could be beneficiaries from the drought out west. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And so wheat does get complicated in that sense, and the fact that we think of hard red winter going to kind of your big breads, and so think of anything more solid, big German breads, etc. Our soft red winter wheat's going to go to more biscuits. That said, there are some substitution effects, and so they will blend some of this wheat, and a lot of that price increase that happens in hard red winter will bleed over into soft red winter. And so we think of farming as a zero-sum game in general, and typically when somebody else in another region of the country has a bad year, it does benefit producers that have yield elsewhere.
So we keep hearing that the demand for wheat continues to grow worldwide, maybe not domestically all the time, but it does worldwide. But we're not really seeing that whole pressure right in the price. What's going on here?
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot that could be causing that. First, I want to touch on kind of exports. And so if we look at exports, they're complicated as well in wheat. And so wheat is a world crop. We've got a lot of countries that produce it. That said, when countries have a shortage, they typically want a wheat that is similar to the wheat that they produce in that country. And so I used Germany as an example earlier. Germany uses something very similar to hard red winter wheat, and that's really what most of the world grows. And so when we do see export demand grow, we see that grow on the hard red winter side, and that's exactly what we saw this previous year. We had a big increase in hard red winter where soft red winter stayed pretty flat. That said, I think the positive, if we're looking forward for the soft red winter producer, is that we're looking at a year where we know yields are going to be down in hard red winter regions. And so I think there is opportunity there looking forward that other countries, especially if they have a shortage of some sort, they have quality deterioration, they could turn and come to the U.S. and buy some soft red winter. I think that's a positive that bodes well as we move into especially the next marketing year.
Yeah, we've also seen that a lot of our competitors around the world are increasing production as opposed to the United States, which has a slight decrease in production. That's not helping the world price.
No, it's not. We see that nationally, they're increasing acreage. That said, one thing I will point out is that although we have seen a decrease in acreage within the United States, our production's got a lot better. And so we are seeing yield increases. A lot of that comes from genetics, better management practices, etc. But we haven't really seen a dip in the wheat yield or the total production that we are producing. We've just seen we've become more efficient.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's, we're here to talk about wheat profitability. We have a great deal of optimism on that. What are the best opportunities for Ohio wheat farmers?
Yeah, I did a lot of work digging into how basis works within the state. And so when I talk about basis, I'm talking about what happens locally. And so one thing that stuck out to me is we don't see a whole lot of appreciation, especially way later in the year. And we even see some elevators that just quit taking wheat at some point in the year, especially right before corn and soybeans, which I think points to more of a capacity issue. So they don't have the room to store both, and so they're going to move to corn and soybeans. And so that creates a challenge. Where I see some opportunity, though, is especially in pre-harvest marketing. And so if we look back at the last year, we had high prices really last year at this time for this year's wheat. So if we were going to deliver it at harvest this year, and then we had the recent increases, and so those were 2 times when you could capture, near $1.50 to $2 extra per bushel. And I think that points to the importance of making sure that we are marketing early, that we're pushing for capturing those higher prices early. And I think even right now, if I'm looking at the crop price for next year, futures yesterday were at around $6.50. And I think that's actually a good spot to make your first sale if you've got that opportunity. Some elevators may push for or may allow that. That said, you can always take a futures contract or buy an option and hopefully lock most of that price in.
Well, we won't hold you to it, but I mean, we are getting ready to harvest. So what's your best advice for farmers when you're thinking about marketing their wheat?
Yeah, and I think especially right now, if you're looking at delivering towards harvest, you want a pre-harvest market. If you have extra bushels in excess, we've had a lot of success in the state of Kentucky of doing some short-term storage. And so not necessarily holding till later in the year, maybe hold till you need to empty that bin for corn and soybeans, but harvesting early. We've had a lot of producers that have claimed, and we've got some scientific work now trying to back this up, but they're finding that they have less quality deterioration if they can harvest that wheat earlier and dry it down instead of letting that wheat dry down in the field.
Well, Grant, I appreciate you coming up from Kentucky and sharing your insights with Ohio farmers.
It's great to be here, and I hope I can do it again sometime.
After the break, new weed control research could have some farmers rethinking how they manage weeds in the field.
Every business makes its own path, and every future comes with tough decisions. Whether you're planning for tomorrow, protecting the people you love, or building something meant to last, you deserve advisors who understand your world. At Element, we know your business is personal. We take the time to listen, to learn what matters most, and to protect what you've worked so hard to build. Let's take the next step together. Visit elementrisk.com today to get started.
Farming isn't just a job. It's the foundation of life. Farmers feed us, fuel our future, and pass down traditions built on hope and hard work. At Farm Credit Mid-America, we know farming is more than a profession. It's a legacy. That's why we stand shoulder to shoulder with farmers, offering agricultural loans, insurance, and education. Because we're not just here for farmers, we're owned by them. Farming matters, and we're proud to honor it every day.
Weed control is complicated and expensive. That's why the Ohio Corn Checkoff is funding research to find out what works and what doesn't, and what farmers would be facing if atrazine was to be limited. Joining me is Alyssa Essman, Assistant Professor and Weed Science Extension Specialist at The Ohio State University. Alyssa, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ted.
So what happened in weed control that made you and some of your other colleagues say, we need to study this?
Yeah, so there's kind of a lot going on right now in the realm of herbicide use and weed management. And one of these is the Endangered Species Act and its potential implications for long-term use of some of these products. And so the Endangered Species Act is not a new sort of legislation, but what it does is, the EPA has currently been under fire for not meeting some of these obligations outlined in the Endangered Species Act, and they've really put themselves at risk for litigations. And so more recently, as herbicides work through the registration and re-registration process, they're updating labels to be compliant with the Endangered Species Act, and that includes some mitigation measures and has long-term potential implications for some herbicides that have long been scrutinized, things like atrazine.
That, it's worth noting, nothing has changed right now, right?
Correct.
This is all in preparation for decisions that could happen, which we expect our land grant to be looking forward and preparing farmers. So
Yes.
what are some of the changes that you're watching for that you want to prepare if they happen?
Yeah, so one of the things we're keeping an eye on are those herbicides that are kind of up next on this docket to be reviewed and have these label guidelines and updates. And so atrazine is one of those that's been very closely looked at, and some of the discussions are about potential use restrictions, whether that's limited rates or application timings based on weather, but also, you know, preparing for the potential occurrence of losing atrazine as one of our tools.
So walk us through this important trial. What are you watching for? What are you comparing out here in the field?
Yeah, and so one of the trends kind of following, you know, these recent events we've been talking about is the offerings by companies, including premixes that don't include atrazine, right? So they've been putting other active ingredients in combination with the idea of having products available for growers if we weren't to have atrazine as an option. So really what we're looking at is the efficacy of these premix options. We have 5 that we're comparing in this trial specifically, and we're also looking at atrazine timing. And so whether we apply it with these atrazine-free premixes post or without the inclusion of atrazine.
The new point system that growers are going to need to be focused on in the future, that's not the reason that you started this trial, right?
Right. So that really, at present, only applies to the products that have already worked through the re-registration
And
process.
atrazine's not one of those yet,
Correct.
but it's soon. It's probably coming
Yes.
soon.
Yep. It's within the coming years. We expect that to be one of those that's under review at present that will be labeled in the coming years. Right now, the only products that follow these guidelines are Liberty Ultra and the 3 dicamba products labeled for over-the-top use in soybean.
Have any of the results you've seen so far, has anything surprised you?
I think we have some really great options in terms of product availability were we to lose atrazine. We've seen really good efficacy across the weed spectrum that we've been evaluating, and I think we have good options when it comes to weed management were we to lose atrazine.
You think there's anything farmers need to be thinking about at this point of your research or maybe doing differently?
The biggest takeaway is to constantly be evaluating what your herbicide program is, really focus on timing, and when it comes to atrazine use, really being aware of the weed spectrum and getting out and scouting. That's something that, you know, when we have these trait systems, we can have a tendency to maybe over-rely on them, but really being familiar with what weeds are in our field and making sure we're tailoring in that could really go a long way.
So where's the research go from here?
I think we have a lot of potential opportunities. One of the things we're really interested in learning more about is some, you know, grower perceptions of the Endangered Species Act and how it's going to change how herbicides are applied. And I think when we think about weed management, these applications and making sure we're doing diligent record keeping is kind of where we're focused on.
Atrazine's a very important product to the farmers of Ohio, so certainly appreciate you and everyone at Ohio State for all the work that you're doing to help prepare us for what might come ahead.
Introducing the latest innovation for corn. Powerful residual chemistry, unleashed in a pre- or early post-application. Don't chase weeds. Attack them. Certain herbicide from BASF.
Ohio Corn and Wheat, working on behalf of farmers.
Ohio Corn and Wheat has some vital roles in helping the profitability of Ohio corn farmers.
Ohio Corn and Wheat's role in creating the next generation of successful farmers is bringing those farmers together.
It's important for farmers all across Ohio to get involved with Ohio Corn and Wheat just because they are farmer-led and it lets our voice be heard.
Experience the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. Join or renew your membership now at ohiocornandwheat.org.
Thanks for watching Kernels. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up on the latest from Ohio Corn and Wheat. You can also follow us on Facebook and social media.